My daughter-in-law forgot to hang up the phone. I heard every word, sharp as a blade. "It's time to send Margaret to a nursing home. She's a burden." I said nothing, but in that moment, something inside me shattered. I sold the house, the very home I had carried on my back for decades, for $890,000. When my son and his wife returned from their business trip, smiling as if life was perfectly under control, they didn't know. A surprise was waiting. The keys didn't fit the lock. My son and his wife stood on the doorstep, puzzled, until they noticed a folded note waiting for them. The moment they read it, their smiles collapsed into screams. And that's when I knew they weren't going to let this go. This was only the beginning. The phone rang just as I was scraping the last of the stew from my plate. It was my late husband Daniel's recipe, though mine never tasted the same without his touch. I glanced at the caller ID and felt my lips curve despite the loneliness. Caitlin. "Mom, how are you holding up?" My daughter's voice carried that familiar warmth that always pierced me with both love and emptiness. I sank into Daniel's old armchair, the leather worn smooth from years of his evening reading sessions. "Oh, you know me, sweetheart," I said softly. "Just finished dinner and was about to watch the news." I didn't mention it was leftovers from 3 days ago, or that I'd been staring at Daniel's photo on the mantel for the better part of an hour. "Are you eating enough, Mom? You know, you can always order groceries online now, right? I showed you the app." "I'm eating plenty," I lied gently, forcing a smile into my voice. In truth, the silence of the house pressed on me heavier than hunger ever could. Then I added, "Though, I had a little scare yesterday. Forgot to turn off the burner under my coffee pot. Good thing I smelled it from the living room." There was a pause. I could almost see Caitlin's frown, that same little crease between her brows she inherited from me. "Mom, maybe we should talk about getting someone to check on you more regularly." "I'm fine, Caitlin. Really. How's your business trip going? You're in Phoenix, right?" "Yes, the conference ends tomorrow. Jeremy's been handling most of the client meetings while I sit through endless presentations about digital marketing trends." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "Listen, Mom, I should get going. Jeremy and I have dinner plans with some potential investors." "Of course, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too, Mom. Take care of yourself, okay?" I heard the click, then a rustling sound. She must have dropped the phone into her purse, I thought, reaching to hang up my end. But then, voices, muffled yet clear enough. "Jeremy, you see how she's deteriorating. She forgot the stove again. What if she burns the house down?" Ice spread through my chest. "It's time for a nursing home," Jeremy's voice said, cold, certain. "She's becoming a burden. And the house? It's worth nearly $1 million. With the Denver market, we could probably get $900,000, maybe more," Caitlin replied, her tone shifting from worry to calculation. They laughed, actually laughed, planning my future as if I weren't even alive. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the floor Daniel and I had laid with our own hands decades ago. I sat frozen in the silence, the phone lying on the hardwood floor Daniel and I had installed together so many years ago. I turned toward his photograph on the mantel. His eyes seemed to pierce through me, as if asking the question I already dreaded answering. Was all our sacrifice for nothing? The grandfather clock ticked steadily in the hallway, Daniel's anniversary gift to me long ago. Its sound filled the emptiness, measuring every second of my betrayal. Something inside me hardened. They thought I was weak. They thought I was confused, fragile, too old to fight back. But they had forgotten who I was. I walked slowly to the kitchen and opened the drawer where I kept receipts and papers. My fingers found the folder as if guided by instinct. 20 years of records, tuition payments, wedding bills, car loans, money I had bled to provide. Each page was a reminder of every sacrifice I had made, every double shift, every sleepless night. Daniel used to say, Don't give her so much that she forgets to be grateful. I should have listened. God, I should have listened. I spread the papers across the kitchen table, each one a scar carved into my life. The university tuition, $48,000, double shifts, concrete dust in my hair, aching bones that never fully healed. I worked myself raw so Caitlin could have the education I never did. The wedding bill, $32,000. I told her we could manage 5, maybe 8. She cried, begged for her dream wedding, and I gave in. I worked weekends, scrubbing floors until my hands bled, just so she could wear the dress she wanted and whisper, "Mom, you're the best mother in the world." She forgot that promise before the cake was even gone. The car loan I co-signed, the rent I never charged, the groceries, the utilities, the dinners I paid for while Jeremy pretended to be the perfect son-in-law. Every receipt was a piece of my soul I had handed over, and every one of them was proof that I was never a burden, proof that they were the ones who had forgotten. I climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the last, until I entered the bedroom Daniel and I once shared. It was still untouched, his reading glasses folded neatly beside the lamp, his old watch resting in the jewelry box I could never bring myself to pack away. I opened the drawer and pulled out the original deed to the house, Margaret and Daniel Flores, 1999. No co-signers, no complications, my name alone now that Daniel was gone. Standing in that room where he had drawn his final breaths, surrounded by the life we had built together, something shifted inside me. The hurt remained, sharp as broken glass. But underneath, steel was forming. They thought I was ready to be discarded. They thought I was too old, too feeble, too grateful to fight. But they were wrong. I looked at Daniel's photo on the nightstand. His voice echoed in my memory. Don't give her so much that she forgets to be grateful. Well, Daniel, I whispered, our daughter has forgotten. But she's about to remember who her mother truly is. I walked to my desk and pulled out a business card I had kept hidden for 3 years. Todd Fisher, real estate attorney. Daniel had insisted we consult him after his diagnosis, just to have our affairs in order. Now, it was time for another meeting. The next morning, I walked through my house like a stranger. But instead of memories, I saw what Caitlin and Jeremy saw: square footage, market value, liquid assets. In the kitchen, I ran my hand along the granite countertops Daniel and I had installed ourselves, working by lamplight because we couldn't afford contractors. Daniel had picked the stone, a speckled gray with veins of gold that caught the morning light. For him, it was beauty. For them, it was resale value. I paused in the living room, the burgundy sofa where Caitlin once curled up to do her homework, the coffee table I had built with my own hands while she played at my feet. To me, they were pieces of our life. To them, they were numbers in a realtor's listing. For the first time, I realized this was no longer just a home. It was evidence, proof of every sacrifice, every hour of labor, every tear shed for a daughter who had already forgotten. And now, it was a fortress I would defend. I stopped in the kitchen, letting my palm slide across the granite countertop. Daniel and I had installed it ourselves, working by lamplight because we couldn't afford anyone else. Daniel had chosen it carefully, gray stone streaked with fine veins of gold that caught the morning light. For us, it was love made solid, proof of what sacrifice could build. For Caitlin and Jeremy, it was nothing more than a selling point on a realtor's brochure. And then, as if the house itself was reminding me, a memory rose. Christmas morning, Caitlin, only 3 years old, wobbling from the refrigerator into Daniel's open arms. His laughter rang out, my tears followed, and the whole room glowed with joy. This house is not just walls and stone. It is our story. And now, it is my evidence. I stood still, listening to the house breathe around me. Every wall, every floorboard, every nail carried the weight of my years, my labor, my love. For Caitlin and Jeremy, it was square footage, appraisal value, a down payment for their dream house in Boulder. But for me, it was more. It was every night Daniel and I had worked by hand to keep it standing. Every tear, every scar, every laugh that had echoed within these walls. And now, it was my fortress. They thought they could erase me, lock me away, and sell off my life. They thought I was too weak to fight back. But they had forgotten one thing. I am not finished. Not yet. "Our baby is walking in our house," Daniel had whispered to me, tears streaming down his face. "In the house we built for her." The living room carried 25 years of Christmas mornings. I could still see little Caitlin's face at 7, glowing with delight when she saw the dollhouse. I had spent 3 months building it in secret after she went to bed each night, sawing wood in the garage, sanding every edge smooth. Daniel had sewn tiny curtains for the windows, stitched little pieces of fabric into miniature furniture. "Mommy, it looks just like our house," Caitlin squealed. And it did, down to the little bay window that matched her real bedroom upstairs. That single bay window had cost me 6 months of double shifts. Daniel had seen it in a magazine and fallen in love with the idea of reading there on lazy afternoons. I had learned to cut angles I never thought possible, measuring and remeasuring until my back ached from crawling on the floor. "Margaret, we can't afford this," Daniel worried when he saw me marking measurements on the wall. "You want it? You'll have it," I told him. "I'll make it work." I climbed the stairs to Caitlin's old room, still painted the soft yellow she begged for on her 16th birthday, still decorated with photos of her high school friends. The small white desk under the window, the one I built, still stood there. I remembered rocking her through colicky nights as a baby, and later sitting beside her at that desk to help her with algebra homework. But the master bedroom was the hardest. Daniel's water glass still sat on his nightstand. His bookmark was still pressed at page 247 of the novel he would never finish. The closets I had built with my own hands still carried the faint perfume of his clothes. This was the room where we had whispered our dreams, where we had planned Caitlin's future, where Daniel had died holding my hand as the machines beeped around us. "Promise me you won't let them take advantage of you," he had said near the end, voice trembling with the weight of death. "You're too good, Margaret. Too generous. Promise me you'll take care of yourself." I had promised. But I hadn't kept that promise. Not yet. In my home office, I pulled open the drawer and found the folder Daniel had kept, construction photos from the spring of 1999. There I was, 25 years younger, stronger, laying the foundation with blistered hands and a tired smile. My crew hammered beams into place, while Daniel, in a borrowed hard hat, brought us lemonade on sweltering afternoons. Her belly had just begun to show with Caitlin. Every picture carried sweat, sacrifice, and hope. The financial records told the truth the photos couldn't. A second mortgage, a personal loan from my brother, Daniel working a part-time job at the school district just so we could afford materials. We ate beans and rice for months. We drove cars held together with duct tape and prayer. But brick by brick, board by board, we built this house with our love, with our youth, with everything we had. And now, my daughter, the child who had taken her first steps in this very kitchen, the girl who once played in the yard Daniel landscaped by hand, wanted to sell it all. She wanted to lock me away like a piece of furniture too old to be useful. I picked up the business card from my desk drawer. Todd Fisher, real estate attorney. The edges were worn from years of handling, but the phone number was still clear. Caitlin and Jeremy thought they were dealing with a confused old woman, grateful for scraps of attention, too weak to fight, too tired to think. But they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I dialed Todd's number. My hands were steady as stone, my voice calm when the secretary answered. The law offices of Fisher and Associates sat on the second floor of a modest brick building on Kfax Avenue, the kind of place that served real people instead of corporations. I wore my best coat, the dark wool one Daniel bought me for church, and arrived 15 minutes early. My hands only trembled slightly as I signed in at the reception desk. Todd was younger than I expected, perhaps mid-50s, with silver hair at his temples and the weary patience of a man who'd heard every family betrayal twice. His office walls carried shelves of law books, but also family photos, his wife, his children, even a dog. A life I once thought Caitlin might have, but she had chosen greed instead. "Mrs. Flores, good to see you again," Todd said gently, pouring coffee. "I remember you and Daniel from a few years back. I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," I replied. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. "I need to discuss something delicate, about my son and daughter-in-law." I told him everything. The phone call I wasn't meant to hear, Caitlin's cold voice calculating how much my house would fetch, Jeremy calling me a burden and planning to put me in a nursing home. Todd's expression barely shifted, but I caught the small shake of his head when I described how eager they were to spend money that wasn't theirs. "Unfortunately, Mrs. Flores," he said at last, leaning back in his chair, "this scenario is more common than you might think. Adult children often assume they know what's best for their aging parents, especially when valuable assets are involved." I leaned forward. "But they can't actually do anything, can they? Legally?" "Let's start with the basics," Todd replied, flipping to a fresh page on his legal pad. "The deed is in your name only, correct?" "Yes. Daniel and I held it jointly, but when he passed, it transferred entirely to me." "Then, legally speaking," Todd said firmly, "your daughter and her husband have no claim to your property. They cannot sell it. They cannot move you. They cannot make any financial decisions without your explicit consent. The house belongs to you. Period." Relief flooded through me, sharp and bright, followed by something harder. Resolve. "So, if I wanted to sell it myself—" "You could," Todd nodded. "We could have it on the market tomorrow if that's what you choose. It's your decision, and yours alone." I thought of Caitlin's laughter, calling me a burden, Jeremy's voice, cold as steel, reducing my worth to square footage. My jaw tightened. "They think I'm helpless, Todd," I whispered. "Maybe it's time I showed them how wrong they are." Todd's pen scratched across the page. "Denver's market is very strong right now, especially in your neighborhood. Properties like yours often sell in a matter of days, sometimes with cash offers above asking price." My heart thudded once, hard. "Days?" "Yes," he said, adjusting his glasses. "If you wanted to act before your daughter and son-in-law return from their trip, it's possible to close in less than a week. Investors are hungry for homes like yours." I folded my hands in my lap, willing them not to tremble. "And once it's sold, there's no going back." "That's correct," Todd replied gently. "This is a major decision, Mrs. Flores. Once you sign, the house is no longer yours." I looked down at my wedding ring, the gold worn thin with decades of work. This was the house Daniel and I built with our sweat and our love, and yet Caitlin had reduced it to nothing more than a payday. I lifted my eyes to Todd. "I built this house with my own hands, Mr. Fisher. Every nail, every board, every detail, I know exactly what I'm doing." His pen paused. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then let's prepare the paperwork." When I left Todd's office, the spring sun felt different, cleaner, sharper, like I had washed months of fog from my mind. For the first time since Daniel's death, my steps felt steady. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. Caitlin's name lit up the screen. For the first time since her betrayal, I smiled. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. I pictured her in some hotel lobby in Phoenix, tapping her watch, expecting her obedient old mother to leap at the call. I let her wonder. Finally, I picked up. "Mom, there you are." Her voice sparkled with artificial enthusiasm. "I was starting to worry when you didn't answer earlier." "Sorry, sweetheart," I replied warmly, letting my voice sound small, harmless. "I was out running some errands. How's Phoenix treating you?" "Oh, you know how these business conferences are," she sighed. Then, after a theatrical pause, "But listen, I have the most wonderful news. Jeremy and I have been planning something very special for you. My grip on the phone tightened. Oh? Yes, she gushed. We want to treat you to a vacation. You deserve rest after everything since Dad died. It's like a resort, but with medical staff on hand, just in case you need anything. A resort, with medical staff. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might break. That sounds lovely, sweetheart, I whispered. You really didn't need to go to so much trouble. Nonsense, your family, Jeremy's voice chimed in from the background. He must have been on speakerphone. We've already made the arrangements. Well, we'll be back by next Friday, Caitlin said brightly. We were hoping you could be ready by then. Just pack some clothes and personal items. You know, the essentials. The essentials. Not the photo albums Daniel had arranged with care. Not the furniture I had built with my own hands. Not the bay window where he used to read while the sunlight poured in. Just the bare scraps they thought an old woman would need before being locked away. My jaw ached from clenching, but my voice stayed soft. Actually, Caitlin, I have a surprise for you too when you get back. There was a pause. Oh, Mom, what kind of surprise? She sounded genuinely delighted, probably imagining I'd signed papers to make their plans easier. I looked out through the bay window Daniel and I had built, at the garden he planted, at the porch swing where we once planned our future. My lips curved, though not in the way she expected. It's something I've been working on since our last conversation, I said slowly. I think you'll be very surprised. That night, I sat at my desk with the glow of the laptop illuminating the dark room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, then typed, Real estate agents, Denver. Search results filled the screen, names, numbers, promises of quick sales and cash offers. I compared testimonials with the same precision I once used to check Daniel's blueprints. One name kept appearing, Brian Connor, 43 years old, specialized in fast transactions, averaging less than 3 weeks from listing to closing. His photo showed a confident smile, and his clients praised him for delivering cash buyers within days. I stared at his number for a long moment, then dialed. Brian Connor, Connor Real Estate, how can I help you? Mr. Connor, I said, steady and firm. My name is Margaret Flores. I'm interested in selling my house quickly. How fast can something like that happen? Well, Mrs. Flores, it depends on the property, he replied, but I've closed in as little as 10 days with cash buyers. What kind of timeline are you hoping for? 10 days. My heart skipped. Caitlin and Jeremy would be back in 8. 10 days will do just fine, I answered, my voice calm, though inside. Fire was burning. At exactly 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I smoothed my coat, drew a deep breath scented faintly of Daniel's lavender sachets still tucked in the closet, and opened the door. Brian Connor looked just like his photo, professional yet approachable, early 40s, with that confident air of a man who knew how to close a deal. He stepped into the foyer, his eyes widening. Wow, he murmured, gaze tracing the crown molding I had installed myself, the hardwood floors Daniel and I had selected years ago. This is exactly what I was hoping for. He moved through the rooms like a man cataloging treasure. The granite countertop, the custom cabinets, the oak floors I had labored over until my knees ached. He ran his hand along the surfaces with genuine appreciation. You weren't kidding about maintaining this place, he said, tapping notes into his tablet. In my 15 years, I rarely see homes kept at this level. I crossed my arms. I was an engineer once, and I believe in building things right the first time. He smiled. It shows. Brian pulled up comparable sales on his tablet, showing me properties in the neighborhood. Similar homes are moving between $850,000 and $920,000. But given your condition, immaculate, original owner, custom features, I recommend we price it at $890,000. That will attract immediate cash offers. $890,000. The number echoed in my head, almost exactly what Caitlin and Jeremy had whispered about in their call. Only now it would be mine, not theirs. "Let's do it," I said firmly. Brian's professional mask slipped just enough to show his excitement. "Excellent choice, Mrs. Flores. I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow morning." The next morning, Brian returned with contracts and a notary. I read every line as carefully as I once checked Daniel's blueprints. My signature slid across the pages: deed transfer, settlement statement, wire confirmation. With each stroke of the pen, another chain broke. $890,000. More money than Caitlin and Jeremy had ever dreamed I could control. Now, it was mine. That evening, I sat alone in the quiet house. The sunset poured through Daniel's bay window, painting the room in gold. But instead of sorrow, I felt anticipation. I picked up my phone and called an emergency locksmith. By nightfall, the brass locks Daniel and I had chosen together lay in a pile, replaced by sharp new silver ones. I turned each key slowly, listening to the mechanical click. Fresh locks for a fresh start. Then I opened my suitcase. Ellen's jewelry box went in first, the wedding photos, the novel Daniel never finished, still marked at page 247, my engineering certificates, a lifetime, packed into a few essentials. Finally, I sat at the kitchen table with a sheet of paper. I wrote slowly, carefully, the way Daniel always loved my handwriting. "Dear Caitlin and Jeremy, if you are reading this, it means my plan worked. I heard your call. I heard you say I was a burden and that my house was worth more than my life. The house has been sold. The money is safe. I have moved somewhere I am valued, not tolerated. Your belongings are in storage. You have 30 days to collect them. For decades, I gave you everything. You repaid me by plotting to discard me. Now you will learn what happens when a mother you underestimated finally fights back. Love, Mom. I folded the letter, sealed it in an envelope, and placed it where they would find it, taped to the inside of the front door. On Thursday afternoon, I returned to the house one final time. I parked inside the garage, using the opener I had kept hidden from Caitlin and Jeremy so the neighbors wouldn't question my presence. In the foyer, I plugged in the small black charger I had ordered online. To anyone else, it looked ordinary. But to me, it was a camera, motion-activated, streaming directly to my phone. I adjusted the angle until the lens captured the front door, the hallway, and the very spot where my letter hung. I walked the rooms one last time. The lavender scent Daniel loved still lingered in the linen closet. My hand brushed the mantel where his photo had stood for 23 years. "It's done, Daniel," I whispered. "Justice served." I locked the door with the new silver key, slid into my car, and drove back to my apartment. From there, I opened the live feed on my phone. The empty doorway stared back at me, timestamp glowing, 6:30 p.m., Thursday evening. By Friday afternoon, Caitlin and Jeremy would return, expecting their obedient mother waiting to be managed. Instead, they would find new locks, an empty house, and a truth they couldn't swallow. At 5:15 p.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Jeremy's black SUV pulled into the driveway. My heart hammered as I watched the feed. Caitlin stepped out first, stretching from the drive. Jeremy followed, dragging their suitcases. They walked with the easy confidence of people claiming their inheritance. Caitlin tried her key. It jammed. She frowned, tried again, harder this time. Nothing. "That's strange," I heard her mutter through the speaker. Jeremy circled around to the back. Minutes later, he returned, panic in his voice. "All the locks are changed. Even the garage is dead." Caitlin's hands shook as she pulled out her phone. "I'll call Mom." The call rang to nowhere. Their voices rose. Frustration turned to dread. Finally, Caitlin climbed through the kitchen window I had left unlatched. Moments later, the front door swung open and Jeremy entered. Both froze when they saw the envelope taped to the door. Caitlin's lips trembled as she ripped it open. Her eyes scanned my words. Jeremy leaned over her shoulder. Their faces collapsed, confusion to shock to horror. "She sold it!" Caitlin choked, her voice breaking. She sold everything. Jeremy cursed under his breath. The old woman outplayed us. I sat back in my chair, wine glass in hand, watching them unravel in the house they thought they owned. For once, I was not their burden. I was their reckoning. I turned off the camera feed. I had seen enough. In my small apartment, I uncorked the bottle of Bordeaux Daniel, and I had been saving for a special occasion. I poured a glass, raised it toward his photo on the nightstand, and whispered, "To us, Daniel." Justice served. The wine tasted of victory, rich and bittersweet. Somewhere across the city, Caitlin and Jeremy sat in the ruins of their own greed, homeless in the very house they tried to steal. For decades, I had given them everything: my time, my strength, my love. They mistook my sacrifice for weakness. But now they knew I was not their burden. I was their reckoning.